So hey guys, this is your favorite fictional vortex. So in this video, we will see what if Naruto was the legendary, White Fox, Witcher who stole the heart of Yennefer the Witcher. But before we start, remember to subscribe and like this video. Now let's start. Chapter 1. The Whispers of the White Fox. The Velenese swamps were not merely damp, they were a living, breathing exhale of decay, a perpetual sigh of rot and cold. Mist, thick as curdled cream, hung low over the stagnant water, clinging to the skeletal fingers of cypress trees and obscuring the twisted, grasping roots that snaked across the sodden earth. The air, heavy and unmoving, tasted of mildewed leaves, ferrous water, and something else, a faint, almost imperceptible tang of ozone and fear. It was precisely the kind of place where things best left undisturbed decided to stir. Naruto Uzumaki, the White Fox, moved through it all with a liquid grace that defied the treacherous terrain. His boots, crafted from hardened monster hide and meticulously treated leather, made barely a sound as they squelched through the muck. Unlike the gaudy, brightly dyed tunics favored by some city dwellers, his own attire was practical. Dark, worn leather armor, scarred from countless encounters, subtly enchanted to ward off damp and minor magical nuisings. A silver blade, its pommel engraved with a stylized fox head, rode snugly on his back, a steel blade resting opposite it. The stark white of his hair, pulled back into a practical, low ponytail, was the only beacon in the monochrome gloom, catching what little light pierced the oppressive canopy. His cerulean eyes, keen and unwavering, pierced the fog, sifting through the visual noise for patterns, anomalies. He wasn't just looking, he was feeling, tasting the very essence of the pervasive dread that had called him here. The spectral signature was faint, a ripple in the arcane fabric of the world, but it was there, consistent, growing. Not a typical wraith, nor a conventional ghost. This entity moved without displacement, leaving no disturbed air currents, no subtle shifts in the mist. It was an anomaly, a ACH of the natural order that piqued Naruto's unique senses. Most Witchers relied on their medallions, on signs and oils. Naruto, however, possessed a more intrinsic connection to the world's energies. A unique mutation of his fox bloodline that allowed him to perceive the subtle flow of ambient energy, a form of sensory overload that was both a blessing and a curse. Right now, it was guiding him like an unseen thread. He knelt, one knee sinking an inch into the viscous mud, and ran a gloved hand over a patch of withered reeds. No frost, no scorch marks, nothing physical. Yet, the energy residual here felt empty, drained, like a hungry void had passed through. His fingers tingled faintly, a silver luminescence, almost imperceptible against his dark leather, briefly tracing the path the entity had taken. This wasn't merely a spirit, it was something that consumed, something that drew life, not just ended it. A distant croak, deeper than any swamp toad, echoed from the murky depths. Not animal, not natural. Naruto rose, his movements fluid, silent as a predator. He drew his silver blade, the polished surface reflecting the muted gray light. The metal hummed, a low, barely audible vibration against his palm, resonating with the presence of the ethereal. He followed the trail of drained energy deeper into the swamp, towards a stand of ancient, gnarled willows whose branches wept into the dark water like mournful figures. The deeper he went, the colder it became, a localized chill that bit at his exposed skin, even through his magically augmented gear. This wasn't just cold, it was the chill of absence, of life being drawn away. His foxfire arts, usually subtle internal hums, began to prickle on his skin, a faint silver sheen tracing the faint scars on his forearms. He channeled it, not into an outward display, but into sharpening his perception, solidifying his resolve. Suddenly, a mournful wail, impossibly close, tore through the silence. It was a sound that scraped against the soul, a pure distillation of sorrow and hunger. The mist swirled, coalescing into a vaguely humanoid shape, taller than any man, composed of swirling vapor and pinpricks of malevolent light where eyes should be. It drifted towards him, its very presence draining the warmth from the air, the color from the leaves. This was it, the specter. Naruto didn't hesitate. He lunged, not with a reckless charge, but with a calculated burst of speed, a whisper of wind accompanying his movement, a subtle application of his foxfire arts. The specter, despite its ethereal nature, reacted, attempting to phase through his attack. But Naruto was ready. As his silver blade swung, he simultaneously unleashed a focused burst of his unique energy. Not a destructive blast, but a pure, foxfire art surge. Shimmering with a silver-white light that interacted with the specter's form. It wasn't physical, it was an energy counter, momentarily solidifying the ethereal form. The specter recoiled, a SHRIEK of outrage tearing through the swamp. It solidified just enough for the silver blade to connect, slicing through its vaporous arm. The air hissed, like water on a hot stone, and the specter's form flickered violently. Its malevolent lights dimming, it was vulnerable, if only for a fraction of a second. Naruto pressed his advantage, a whirlwind of calculated strikes. He wasn't just swinging a sword, he was dancing. Each movement economical, precise. His feet found purchase on slick roots, his body twisting and turning with impossible agility. He parried an ethereal claw swipe that would have drained him dry. The impact sending a shiver of cold up his arm. With another surge of foxfire, he bound the specter's lower half to the ground, a shimmering silver chain of pure energy holding it momentarily in place. It wasn't physical, it was a conceptual tether, binding the incorporeal. The specter, enraged, let out a piercing shriek that threatened to rupture his eardrums. It surged forward, attempting to engulf him, to drain the life from him. Naruto met it head-on, his eyes glowing faintly with the silver light of his power. He channeled more energy, not outward, but inward, creating a subtle, pulsating shield around himself. The specter hit it, its form rippling and distorting like a mirage, unable to pass through. It was a purely defensive application of his foxfire, not for warding off physical blows, but for repelling incorporeal attacks, and aura dampening, that extended beyond mere invisibility. Seeing its tactic fail, the specter faltered. Naruto seized the moment. With a guttural roar, he drove his silver blade deep into its chest, twisting the hilt. The specter shrieked, a sound of agony and finality, its form unraveling into wisps of mist that quickly dissipated into nothingness. The oppressive cold lifted, replaced by the damp chill of the swamp, and the heavy air began to clear. Silence, true silence, descended once more, broken only by the distant croaking of a genuine toad. Naruto pulled his blade free, wiping it clean on a patch of grass. The task was done. Another restless spirit laid to rest, another anomaly dealt with. He sensed no residual malevolence, only the faint echoes of the creature's existence. He turned back towards the direction of the dilapidated village he'd come from, the faint outline of its scattered huts barely visible through the mist. He'd accepted the contract from a desperate old woman, her voice raspy with fear, her eyes haunted by the disappearances. He never asked for names or titles, just a description of the problem and a fair price. The payment was typically meager, just enough to cover supplies and keep his gear maintained, but the work itself was his purpose. It kept him moving, kept him sharp, and kept the whispers of his own past at bay. As he neared the edge of the willows, his acute senses picked up a new disturbance. Not magical, not spectral, but a distinct scent, lilac and gooseberries, sharp and sophisticated, cutting through the earthy stench of the swamp. And then, the faint, precise click of a boot on a dead branch. Not an animal, not a villager. Someone was approaching, and they moved with a deliberate, almost arrogant confidence. He remained still, a shadow among shadows, his foxfire arts subtly dampening his presence. He melted back into the deeper brush, his hand resting on the high hilt of his steel sword. For human threats, he preferred to observe before acting. A figure emerged from the mist, startlingly vibrant against the drab landscape. A woman, tall, impossibly elegant even in the grime of the swamp. Her raven hair cascaded around her shoulders, framing a face of striking, almost haughty beauty. Her eyes, the color of amethyst, swept over the scene with an almost disdainful air, taking in the disturbed mud, the broken reeds, the faint residual chill. She wore a dark, form-fitting tunic and trousers, impractical for the swamp, yet she moved through it as if on a paved road. The scent of lilac and gooseberries intensified, a deliberate declaration of her presence. A sorceress, no doubt. Her aura crackled with raw, untamed power, contained by years of rigorous training but radiating a formidable presence. She was not subtle. She was a storm, contained. She stopped at the precise spot where Naruto had dispatched the specter, her gaze sharp, dissecting the lingering magical residue. Amateurish, she muttered, her voice a low alto, laced with a sophisticated contempt that could curdle milk. A simple spectral entity, yet the magical signature is odd. Unconventional. She knelt, not bothering to muddy her fine clothes, and ran a gloved finger over the ground. Residual energy is strange. Not a sign, not a spell. What in the blazes did this? Naruto stepped out from behind a thick cypress. His movement so smooth, so utterly devoid of sound, that the sorceress stiffened, her hand instinctively going to a pouch at her waist. She spun, her amethyst eyes blazing, a flicker of arcane power dancing at her fingertips. You. Her voice was a low hiss, a blend of surprise and irritation. She took in his white hair, his unreadable cerulean eyes, the faint silver shimmer that still clung to him. The white fox. Rumors follow you, even into this godforsaken swamp. I suppose you're responsible for this mess. She gestured dismissively at the lingering traces of the vanquished specter. Naruto offered a slight, almost imperceptible nod. It was dealt with. The contract fulfilled. His voice was calm, a low baritone, utterly devoid of the deference she likely expected. And no, it wasn't a mess. It was efficient. Yennefer of Vengerberg, for it could be no other, narrowed her eyes. Her reputation preceded her, as did his. She was known for her sharp tongue and even sharper magic. He was known for his quiet competence and uncanny ability to vanish when he chose. Efficient. You call this crude explosion of energy efficient? A proper exorcism requires finesse. A precise dismantling of the bond, not a brute force obliteration. Her voice dripped with disdain. Finesse is for those who have time to waste, Naruto countered, his gaze unwavering. The creature was feeding, growing stronger. A precise dismantling would have left it opportunities to escape, to return. Obliteration ensures it stays gone. Permanently. He sheathed his silver sword with a soft click. Unless you prefer your contracts to be repeat business. A hint of dry wit laced his words. Yennefer scoffed, a delicate sound that conveyed volumes of condescension. Bold words for a mutant. And presumptuous. I am Yennefer of Vengerberg. And I do not prefer anything to be repeat business, Witcher. I ensure my work is thorough. She paused, her gaze raking over him, analytical and piercing. Though I admit, your method is unusual. That residual energy, it doesn't align with any known school of magic. What exactly are you? Naruto met her stare evenly. A Witcher. Nothing more, nothing less. As for the energy, it's my own. A gift, perhaps, or a curse. Depends on the day. He wasn't giving her answers, merely observations. His confidence wasn't born of arrogance, but an unwavering self-knowledge. He knew what he was capable of. A gift, Yennefer mused, her tone suddenly thoughtful, devoid of its previous contempt, though still sharp. Her curiosity was clearly piqued. Or a unique mutation. I've heard whispers of a Witcher unaligned with the traditional schools, one who uses a strange, almost elemental power, a foxfire, they call it. Is that what I'm seeing? A subtle silver shimmer, like static electricity on the air around you. She extended a hand, a flicker of arcane energy sparking at her fingertips, as if to test his aura. Naruto didn't flinch. Call it what you will. It helps get the job done. He didn't avoid her probing. He simply let his own essence remain unyielding. You're here for the same entity, I presume. A day late, as it turns out. Yennefer lowered her hand, her expression a complex mixture of annoyance and genuine intrigue. I was following a distinct magical signature, one that indicated something beyond a common specter. An unusual resonant frequency. She paused, her eyes narrowing slightly. It led me to a similar energy signature, almost identical, radiating from something beneath the creature's lair. Something that didn't feel natural. She looked pointedly at the spot where the specter had been slain. You found it, didn't you? The source. Naruto's gaze flickered to the ground. He had indeed found something. After the specter had dissipated. A small, intricately carved talisman, not unlike a piece of ancient jewelry, but radiating a peculiar, cold hum that felt mechanical. It wasn't magical, not in the way Yennefer's power was. But it pulsed with a complex, alien energy that spoke of intricate design, not arcane lore. It was tucked securely in a hidden pouch on his belt. Perhaps, he said evasively, choosing his words carefully. What makes you think there was a source beyond the creature itself? He was testing her, seeing how much she truly knew, how much she was deducing. Yennefer straightened, her posture radiating an imperious authority. Because, Witcher, spectral entities of that magnitude, those that drain life force so completely, are rarely born of natural causes. They are often anchors, or conduits, for something larger, something directed. The signature I sensed was not of the specter, but of its origin. An artificial origin. Her amethyst eyes fixed on him, piercing. So, you did find it. Show it to me. Her tone was a command, not a request. Naruto simply looked at her, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. And why would I do that? I'm not in the habit of sharing my findings with every powerful sorceress who wanders into a bog. A flash of genuine annoyance crossed Yennefer's face. She was not accustomed to being gainsaid, especially by a Witcher. Because, you arrogant oaf, that source is precisely what I'm investigating. It resonates with ancient energies, but not the ones I'm familiar with. It hints at a hidden, deeper threat. If you've found it, you will share it, or I shall take it from you. Her hand glowed, a miniature violet storm brewing at her fingertips, a clear threat. Naruto remained unmoved. You can try. His stance shifted imperceptibly, his weight distributing, his hand hovering near his steel sword. He wasn't afraid of her power. He respected it, certainly, but fear was a luxury he couldn't afford. Besides, he found her outrage entertaining. She was beautiful, undeniably, and formidable, a rare combination he appreciated. The tension in the swamp crackled, almost palpable, like the static before a lightning strike. Yennefer's eyes narrowed, a silent challenge passing between them. Then, unexpectedly, she let out a short, sharp laugh, devoid of mirth, but laced with a reluctant amusement. You, truly are as infuriating as the rumors suggest. Fine. A truce, for now. This thing is more than a simple Witcher contract. Its implications could be far-reaching. I sensed a faint echo, a unique frequency I haven't encountered in centuries. Perhaps since before your ancestors crawled out of their caves. She gave him a pointed look, referring to the traditional Witcher origins. Naruto considered her words. She was right. The talisman wasn't magical. It pulsed with something older, something mechanical, yet alive. It's not magic, he confirmed, surprising her with the concession. He drew the object from his pouch. It was palm-sized, made of a dark, non-reflective metal that felt strangely warm to the touch, despite the cold. Intricate, glowing lines of faint green energy pulsed within its surface. Following a complex, non-Euclidean pattern. It hummed, a barely audible, almost musical tone. Yennefer gasped, a rare display of genuine astonishment. She took a step closer, her eyes fixed on the talisman. Her arcane senses reaching out to it, probing its nature. Impossible, she breathed, her voice a whisper. This isn't arcana. This is technology. Her fingers, long and slender, hovered inches from it, sensing the strange energy. It's ancient, impossibly so. But not of the elder races, not of the elves or dwarves. Something else. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and dawning dread. Where did you find this? Under the specter's lair. It was buried deep, almost as if it was drawing power from the creature, or perhaps the creature. Was a manifestation of its corrupted energy. Naruto watched her, his expression unreadable. Her reaction confirmed his suspicions. This was something significant. Corrupted energy, indeed, Yennefer murmured, her mind clearly racing. This it's a power source. A conduit, perhaps, a very advanced one that could destabilize regions. Power things we can't even imagine. She closed her eyes for a moment, concentrating. The signature I felt led here. But it also leads, further, to a hidden network. Something moving in the shadows. This wasn't an isolated incident, Witcher. This was a test, a symptom. Of what? Naruto asked, his voice low. Of an organization, I believe. One that is perhaps seeking to reawaken something. Something that predates our understanding of magic. They manipulate these conduits. They create these manifestations. Her gaze hardened, losing its awe, replacing it with a steely resolve. This is not just your contract anymore, Witcher. This is a threat to the continent. A threat to everyone. He saw the shift in her, the way her natural arrogance was momentarily superseded by genuine concern for the larger world. It made her, surprisingly, more appealing. So, we're agreed then. He stated, a subtle invitation in his tone. This, obsidian hand, or whatever they call themselves, needs to be stopped. Yennefer looked at him, truly looked at him, her amethyst eyes searching his. Seeing past the mutant and the Witcher, perhaps glimpsing the fierce intelligence and unwavering sense of purpose beneath. We are, she conceded, a hint of reluctant respect in her voice. But do not mistake this for a partnership, White Fox. We merely have a common enemy. And I assure you, my methods will still involve a great deal more finesse than your obliterative tendencies. A faint, almost imperceptible smile, not quite condescending, played on her lips. It was a challenge. As long as the job gets done, Naruto replied, his own faint smile mirroring hers. It was a silent acknowledgement of their contrasting approaches, and a mutual understanding that for now, those differences were secondary to the common threat. I take it you know where to begin. I always know where to begin. Witcher, Yennefer said, her confidence returning in full force. There's a scholar in Oxenfurt, a reclusive arcanist who specializes in ancient, obscure texts. If anyone would have heard whispers of such technology, it would be him. And I have ways of encouraging him to share his knowledge. A dangerous gleam entered her eye. As they began to move out of the swamp, Yennefer leading the way with an impatient flick of her hand, a small figure darted out from behind a cluster of reeds. It was a girl, perhaps 17 or 18, her clothes simple, patched, but clean. Her eyes, wide and earnest, fixed on Naruto. Mr. Fox, she exclaimed, her voice soft but filled with awe. You did it, didn't you? The wailing stopped. Mama said the shadow beast is gone for good. She clutched a small, woven basket in her hands. We heard the fighting. We were so scared, but you saved us. She offered the basket, revealing a few perfectly ripe apples and a small, fresh baked loaf of coarse bread, still warm. It's not much, but, please. As thanks. Her face was flushed, a mixture of shyness and profound gratitude. Naruto's formidable demeanor softened almost imperceptibly. He looked at the simple gifts, then at the girl's hopeful, earnest face. He took an apple, its skin firm and unblemished, and a piece of the bread. Thank you, he said, his voice gentle. It's more than enough. Stay safe, now. His smile was brief, genuine, and utterly disarming. It transformed his face, chasing away the warrior's intensity, revealing a deep well of empathy. The girl's eyes widened further, a blush spreading across her cheeks. She stammered, You're very welcome, Mr. Fox. If you ever need anything at all, her gaze lingered on him, filled with a nascent admiration that went beyond simple gratitude. Yennefer, who had paused and watched this brief interaction with a raised eyebrow, scoffed again. Oh, do get on with it, Witcher. We have more pressing matters than collecting admirers in every backwater village. Her voice held a note of impatience, but her amethyst eyes, though narrowed, also held a flicker of something unreadable, a mixture of mild irritation and a spark of genuine curiosity at the girl's open adoration, and Naruto's easy acceptance of it. He was clearly more than just a brutal monster hunter. Naruto merely chuckled, a low, pleasant sound, as he took a bite of the apple. A little goodwill never hurt anyone, sorceress. Especially when dealing with hostile forces. He gave the girl a final, reassuring nod. Then turned to follow Yennefer. As they walked, Yennefer strode purposefully, but her gaze occasionally flickered back to Naruto. She had seen the way the villagers looked at him, not with fear, but with a deep-seated respect. She had seen the genuine warmth in his eyes when he spoke to the girl. It was unsettling. Most witchers were crude, gruff, barely tolerated. This, White Fox, was different. He was dangerous, certainly, but also, strangely charismatic. She found herself unexpectedly curious about him, about the origins of his unique powers, about the man beneath the legend. And a small, unsettling part of her, a part she rarely acknowledged, was intrigued by the effortless way he commanded respect, and even affection, from those around him. He was a disruptor, a force of nature unlike any she had encountered. And now, he held the key to an ancient technology that could unravel the very fabric of their world. This unlikely alliance, forged in the Velanese muck, promised to be complicated. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. The Silent City and the Obsidian Hand. The air grew heavy, not with the familiar dampness of Valen's bogs, but with an unnatural stillness that pressed against the eardrums. The ground beneath their feet, once squelchy earth, slowly transitioned into a fine, dark silt, strangely devoid of life. No insects hummed, no swamp fowl cried. The only sound was the rhythmic, almost hypnotic squelch of their boots, a stark counterpoint to the profound silence that swallowed every other ambient noise. The mist here wasn't just low-hanging, it swirled with an iridescent quality, catching the muted pre-dawn light in an ethereal dance. Naruto led, his senses constantly sifting the environment. The talisman, now secured in a different, more accessible pouch, thrummed faintly against his hip. A silent compass pointing them deeper into this forgotten realm. Yennefer followed closely, her violet eyes scanning the shifting mists, a flicker of raw power often visible at her fingertips. Ready to unleash arcane energy at the slightest provocation. Their unspoken accord, forged in the Velanese swamp, was a fragile thing, built on shared purpose and a healthy mutual wariness. The resonance is stronger here, Yennefer murmured, her voice a low contralto, cutting through the silence without disturbing it. Like a vast, dormant coil, waiting to be awakened. This isn't a natural formation, Witcher. This is architecture. But unlike anything I've ever charted. She was right. As the mist thinned slightly, ghostly outlines began to emerge from the gloom, towering, monolithic structures. Not built of stone or wood, but of a dark, impossibly smooth material that absorbed light, giving them an almost two-dimensional appearance. These were not ruins ravaged by time and elements. They were ruins that had simply ceased to be, as if frozen mid-existence. Some structures spiraled impossibly high, their peaks lost in the upper layers of mist, while others lay half-submerged in shallow, obsidian dark pools of water, their true depths unknown. They were alien, beautiful in a terrifying, inhuman way. This was the Silent City. Naruto ran a hand over a jutting buttress of the strange, obsidian-like material. It felt cold, utterly smooth, and vibrated with a faint, almost imperceptible hum that resonated in his bones. No seams, he observed, his voice quiet. No mortar, as if it grew from the ground itself. Or was forged by methods beyond our comprehension, Yennefer countered, touching the surface with a finger wrapped in a glove. It draws arcane energy, subtly, like a parasitic growth, but it doesn't use it. It converts it, channels it. For what purpose, I can't yet ascertain. She frowned, her brow furrowing in concentration. My spells feel muted here. The ambient magic is warped, distorted by this place's innate resonance. This was precisely where Naruto's unique abilities shone. While Yennefer's conventional magic struggled, his foe's fire arts were less about drawing on external arcane flows and more about manipulating the intrinsic energies of his own being and the subtle natural forces around him. He felt the city's pulse not as a magical disruption, but as a complex, engineered rhythm. His sensory overload heightened his perception of the subtle energy currents within the obsidian structures, allowing him to perceive hidden pathways, dormant mechanisms, and even the ghost of residual power left by whoever had constructed this place. Watch your step, Naruto cautioned, suddenly halting. Ahead, the seemingly solid ground rippled, as if a mirage had settled upon it. His senses screamed at him, instability. The ground here isn't what it seems. It's adaptive, or reactive. Yennefer peered at it, then conjured a small, glowing orb of light and sent it skittering across the rippling surface. The orb immediately distorted, stretching, then vanishing with a faint pop, as if swallowed by a black hole. A localized dimensional anomaly, she mused, her voice edged with a rare hint of uncertainty. Or perhaps a complex illusion over a void. Neither, Naruto stated, his eyes tracing the subtle energetic currents he perceived. It's a form of selective solidity. Like walking on water, but the water decides when it's liquid. There's a pattern, a sequence. He picked up a loose, fist-sized piece of the obsidian. material and tossed it lightly onto the rippling surface. It floated for a moment, then slowly, silently, sank, as if dissolving into the unreality beneath. Yennefer raised an elegant eyebrow. "And how do you propose we navigate an illusionary void that consumes all?" Her tone was skeptical, though her gaze held a challenge, a silent dare for him to prove his unconventional competence. "It's not an illusion. It's a filter," Naruto corrected, stepping forward. He extended his hand, and a faint, silver-white glow, barely visible in the pre-dawn light, enveloped his palm. He touched the rippling surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the ripples calmed beneath his touch, solidifying into a narrow, dark path that stretched for about 10 feet. The silver light pulsed gently around his hand, a tangible manifestation of his unique energy interacting with the environment. "My foxfire arts can resonate with its frequency. Temporarily stabilize it, but it's delicate. We'll need to move quickly, and precisely." He stepped onto the newly formed path. The obsidian felt solid, cold, and utterly still beneath his boots. Yennefer watched him, a slow, appraising look in her eyes. There was no magic involved in what he did. No incantation, no grand gesture. Just a subtle, intuitive manipulation of energy, as natural as breathing for him. It was fascinating, and frustratingly opaque. "An intriguing parlor trick, Witcher," she finally said, her voice dry, but without its usual disdain. "Lead the way, then. But if you drop me into an abyssal void, I assure you, my revenge will be memorable." Naruto merely offered a small, knowing smirk. "Try to keep up, sorceress." They moved through the silent city, Naruto methodically stabilizing paths, revealing hidden steps, and bypassing dorm and energy traps that Yennefer's own magical senses might have missed or misinterpreted. She was forced to rely on him, a novel and slightly irritating experience for the proud sorceress. Yet, Shifu, ND herself grudgingly impressed by his almost preternatural intuition, his ability to read the alien environment with such clarity. He didn't think about it, he felt it. As the morning light slowly filtered down through breaks in the mist, they came upon a section of the city that seemed to hum with more persistent energy. Here, the obsidian structures glowed faintly from within, revealing intricate geometric patterns that pulsed with a faint green light, the same light emanating from the talisman. "This is it," Yennefer breathed, her hand going to her own amulet, which thrummed in response to the increased energy. "The central nexus of a sub-network. This is where the conduits are connected, where the power is being drawn." They found the remnants of a makeshift encampment, hidden amongst a cluster of towering crystalline pillars that resonated with the city's hum. Crude tents, discarded rations, and arcane diagrams scrawled on the smooth obsidian walls. But what caught Naruto's eye were not the magical symbols, but strange, metallic casings and shattered remnants of what appeared to be complex machinery, unlike anything seen in the current era. It was sleek, efficient, and clearly designed for power. "The obsidian hand," Naruto murmured, picking up a shard of polished metal that still faintly hummed. "They're here, or they were. This isn't just magic, Yennefer. This is something else entirely. Ancient technology, re-engineered, a cult of technomancers." Yennefer scoffed, though her expression was serious. "That's a new one. I've heard whispers, of course. Lunatics seeking forbidden knowledge, dabbling in long-forgotten sciences. But this is beyond mere dabbling. This suggests a grand design. A larger organization." She pointed to a diagram on the wall, etched with surprising precision. "Look here. This isn't a spell matrix. It's an energy schematic. They're trying to interface with the city's core. To reactivate it." Before they could delve deeper, a sudden, guttural roar echoed through the obsidian canyons. It was not the shriek of a specter, but the grating, metallic groan of something immense and powerful. Then, the sounds of battle, the clang of steel, the crackle of magical bursts, and the desperate shouts of men. "Sounds like someone else found their little hideout," Naruto said, drawing his steel sword, its polished blade reflecting the green glow of the structures. He moved with swift, silent purpose towards the sounds. They rounded a sharp, crystalline corner and came upon a scene of brutal carnage. A small squad of soldiers, clad in distinctive blue and black armor, were pinned down behind a makeshift barricade of fallen obsidian shards. They were outnumbered and outmatched by hulking, golem-like constructs made of the same dark, resonant material as the city itself. These constructs, unlike typical golems, moved with a disturbing fluidity, their limbs crackling with green energy, their blows crushing and precise. They were powered by the city's own dormant energy. Weaponized. Temerians, Yennefer identified, her voice grim. The Blue Stripes, special forces, highly trained, but they stand no chance against those abominations. At the heart of the skirmish, a woman fought with a desperate ferocity. Clad in the same blue and black, her short, practical hair was matted with sweat and blood, but her movements were sharp, efficient. She wielded a longsword with expert precision, deflecting crushing blows and cutting surprisingly deep into the constructs, material, though it barely slowed them. This had to be Vase, the infamous leader of the Blue Stripes. Known for her uncompromising loyalty and deadly skill, one of the constructs, larger than the others, raised a massive, green glowing fist, ready to crush a wounded soldier. Vase, seeing it, let out a furious roar and threw herself forward, attempting to intercept. It was a suicidal move. Hold, Naruto's voice, surprisingly loud and commanding, cut through the din. He didn't wait for a response. He launched himself into the fray, a blur of white hair and gleaming steel. His approach was direct, unburdened by hesitation. He met the construct's crushing blow not with his sword, but with a sudden, controlled burst of his foxfire arts. A shimmering silver barrier, barely visible, flared around his arm, meeting the green glowing fist. The impact was deafening, a sound like grinding stone and shattering crystal, but Naruto held his ground. The barrier dispersed the construct's energy, momentarily staggering it. Before the construct could recover, Naruto was already moving. He didn't try to cleave through its thick hide, he aimed for the joints, the internal energy conduits he instinctively sensed. His blade, imbued with a subtle charge of foxfire, SL, iced through the construct's knee joint with uncanny ease. The construct roared, an internal mechanism grinding, and began to list, its movements becoming jerky and erratic. Vase, who had been bracing for impact, stared, her eyes wide with shock. She'd never seen anyone, let alone a witcher, engage a construct like that. No signs, no obvious magic, just sheer force and precision. Yennefer, meanwhile, didn't waste a second. While Naruto diverted the constructs, she unleashed a torrent of destructive magic, a concentrated bolt of arcane lightning that struck the lead construct, making it shudder and crackle. Its green glow flickered, dimmed, then vanished as it crashed to the ground, inert. Naruto moved like a dancer of death, weaving between the constructs, clumsy, powerful attacks. He wasn't just fighting, he was dismantling. He found the weak points, the energy pathways, the joints, exploiting them with brutal efficiency. His foxfire provided bursts of speed, enhanced strength, and precision strikes that left glowing silver trails in the air. He was a force of nature, utterly in his element. Fall back, regroup. Vase roared to her men, seizing the opportunity presented by Naruto and Yennefer's intervention. She didn't question why they were here, only capitalized on the sudden advantage. She watched Naruto, her gaze sharp, assessing. He moved with a speed and fluidity she'd only ever seen in elite assassins. Not witchers. His white hair was a stark beacon in the gloom, a blur of motion. A construct lunged at Naruto from his blind spot. He pivoted, not with a dodge, but with a rapid, almost impossible spin. His steel sword flashing, he thrust the blade not into the construct, but into the ground just beside it, simultaneously unleashing a focused burst of his foxfire arts. The ground buckled, a localized tremor of earth and stone, throwing the construct off balance and causing it to stumble. Then, with a savage uppercut using his free hand, imbued with the same silver energy, he struck the construct's head, the blow cracking its obsidian plating and momentarily disabling its internal workings. Thereafter something specific, Yennefer shouted, pointing to one of the smaller constructs that was systematically ripping through the barricade, its glowing green eyes fixed on a specific, intricate console built into a pillar. That console, it's controlling the larger constructs. Vase, seeing the target, barked orders. Suppressive fire. Keep them off that pillar. Her men, though wounded, rallied, unleashing a volley of bolts and arrows. Naruto, understanding the critical nature of the console, moved to intercept the smaller construct. His combat was a brutal ballet, utterly captivating in its efficiency. He didn't waste motion. Each strike, each block, each subtle shift of his body was designed to maximize damage and minimize risk. He reached the construct, disabling it with a swift, brutal series of blows that targeted its core energy conduit. The green glow in its eyes died, and it slumped, inert. The larger constructs, deprived of their direct command, began to slow, their movements becoming more predictable. This was their chance. Yennefer. Naruto called out, his voice a low growl of exertion. Disrupt their connection. Vase, clear a path. Yennefer didn't need to be told twice. She unleashed a focused chain lightning spell, arcing between the remaining constructs, overloading their internal systems. Green sparks flew, circuits popped, and the hum of the city's energy pulsed erratically as the abominations shuddered and collapsed. Vase, seeing the constructs falter, rallied her remaining men. Now, push them back, flank them. They moved with renewed vigor, driving the last of the operational constructs away, forcing them to retreat deeper into the silent city. The sounds of battle slowly faded, replaced once more by the oppressive silence, punctuated by the ragged breaths of the surviving Temerian soldiers. Vase, grim-faced, surveyed her wounded men, then turned her attention to Naruto and Yennefer. Her eyes, sharp and assessing, fixed on Naruto. He was bruised, a trickle of blood from a minor cut on his temple, but his posture was still relaxed. His breathing even. He hadn't even seemed to break a sweat. She'd seen Witchers fight, even strong ones, but never with this blend of raw power, tactical brilliance, and utterly unique abilities. He wasn't just a monster hunter, he was a one-man army. Who in the blazes are you? Vase demanded, her voice gruff, yet devoid of its initial hostility. It was a question, not an accusation. You saved my unit. I owe you that much, at least. Naruto sheathed his blade. Naruto. Some call me the White Fox. He gestured vaguely to Yennefer. And this is Yennefer of Vangerberg. Ves's eyes widened slightly at Yennefer's name. A sorceress. Figures. She still held a general distrust of mages, but Yennefer's decisive action during the fight had earned her a measure of grudging respect. Well, White Fox, and sorceress. You arrived just in time. These things are unlike anything we've encountered. She kicked at the inert construct. They're not natural. They're engineered. Precisely. Yennefer cut in. Stepping forward. We believe they are creations of a hidden organization, the Obsidian Hand, who are attempting to harness the ancient technology of this city. And they appear to be hunting the same thing we are. She looked at Naruto, a silent understanding passing between them. He had already told her about the talisman, now it was time for a cautious alliance. Vase listened, her face unreadable. Obsidian Hand, you say? We've heard whispers of strange disappearances, of powerful artifacts surfacing and vanishing just as quickly. Rumors dismissed as madmen's ramblings. She looked from Yennefer to Naruto, then back to her wounded men. Her pragmatic mind quickly weighed the situation. They were outmatched. Alone, they would have been annihilated. With these two, there was a chance. All right, Vase finally declared, her gaze firm. My men are in no state to continue pursuit. But this changes things. If these, Obsidian Hand, lunatics are weaponizing ancient tech, it poses a threat to Temeria, to the entire northern kingdoms. She looked directly at Naruto, her eyes piercing. I don't trust mages much, no offense, sorceress. But I trust a good fight, and I saw you fight, Witcher. You're efficient, and you just saved my life, and my men's. A rare, almost imperceptible nod of respect. We'll pool our resources. For now, tell me everything. Naruto met her gaze, a hint of genuine approval in his eyes. Vase was no nonsense, pragmatic, and respected strength. He appreciated that. There's a lot to tell, he began, gesturing towards the deeper parts of the silent city. The paths they had yet to explore, and a lot more to uncover. This, Obsidian Hand, goes deeper than you might imagine. As Vase barked orders to her surviving men, instructing them to tend to the wounded and set up a defensive perimeter, Yennefer watched Naruto. Her initial dismissal had evaporated, replaced by a potent cocktail of fascination and a grudging admiration. He wasn't just powerful, he was different. His calm confidence, his intuitive understanding of the alien technology of this city, and his sheer prowess in combat, it all contributed to an aura she found increasingly compelling. He had saved a unit of soldiers without fanfare, without demanding praise. And the way he had moved, the subtle silver light that had accompanied his actions, there was a raw, untamed power there. Yet perfectly controlled, it was a stark contrast to her own, often volatile, magic. She found herself unexpectedly curious about the White Fox. Very curious indeed. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. The Crossroads of Intrigue and Melody. The cobbled streets of Oxenford, usually a labyrinth of scholarly quiet, hummed with the vibrant, cacophonous energy of the annual academic festival. Rain, a persistent drizzle that glazed the ancient stones, did little to dampen the spirits. Instead, it merely added a reflective sheen to the brightly colored banners strung between ornate buildings and made the scent of spiced wine and roasting meats from countless stalls hang heavier in the crisp autumn air. Scholars debated animatedly outside crowded taverns, students hurried between lectures, and merchants hawked their wares with booming voices, their calls weaving into a symphony of urban life. Naruto, Yennefer, and Vase moved through the throng, an unlikely trio turning more than a few heads. Yennefer, despite her practical travel clothes, carried herself with an imperious grace that marked her as someone of consequence. Vase, in her utilitarian, slightly mud-splattered Temerian uniform, moved with the coiled readiness of a veteran soldier, her eyes constantly scanning the crowds, assessing threats. Naruto, in his unassuming but well-maintained Witcher gear, seemed to blend stand out simultaneously, his white hair a beacon, yet his presence subtle, almost like a ghost moving through the living. The stench of academia and stale ale is overwhelming, Yennefer declared, fanning herself delicately with a gloved hand, though the air was cool. And the incessant chatter of these witless students. Truly, my patience is tested. It's called culture, sorceress, Vase retorted, a dry edge to her voice. Something you might consider sampling. Besides, this chatter is where information hides. Better than trying to interrogate a dead construct. Naruto simply watched, his senses attuned to the subtle currents of the city. He could feel the pulse of 1,000 conversations, the shifting emotions of the crowd. He wasn't looking for a monster here, he was looking for a whisper, a misplaced word. A hint of the obsidian hand's deeper roots. We stick to the plan, he stated, his voice calm, cutting through their familiar bickering. Yennefer, your contacts among the mages. Vase, the military and intelligence networks. I'll canvass the underworld, the less savory corners, and the scholarly fringe. Meet at the Gilded Quill, at dusk. Don't draw unnecessary attention. As if a witcher with hair like driven snow could be anything but conspicuous, Yennefer scoffed, but a fleeting, almost imperceptible smirk touched her lips. She understood the necessity of their varied approaches. With a swirl of dark fabric and a faint scent of lilac, she vanished into a side alley, undoubtedly seeking out the more exclusive, magically veiled establishments. Vase gave a curt nod. Right, don't go charming any noblewomen, White Fox. We need information, not scandal. There was a glint in her eye, a challenge, but also a hint of something else, a grudging respect for his natural magnetism, which she'd witnessed firsthand with the village girl. She melted into the crowd, her military bearing allowing her to navigate the throng with surprising efficiency, heading towards the city garrison. Naruto was left alone amidst the swirling currents of Oxenford. He chose a less direct route, allowing his instincts to guide him. He passed by street performers, their melodies weaving through the rain, and food vendors, their savory aromas making his stomach rumble. He observed a shifty-eyed merchant selling questionable artifacts, a group of students huddled conspiratorially, their hushed tones hinting at more than just academic gossip, a grizzled veteran muttering to himself in a dark alley, his uniform too worn for active service, but his eyes too sharp for a mere beggar. His steps eventually led him to a bustling, warmly lit inn named the Roaring Griffin. The sounds of laughter and music spilled out onto the street, drawing him in. He wasn't looking for a lead directly, but sometimes. The truest insights came from the unlikeliest of places, a drunkard's boast, a bard's song, a tavern keeper's gossip. The interior of the inn was a riot of noise and warmth. Patrons crammed shoulder to shoulder, tankards clinking, voices rising in a boisterous chorus. In the center of the common room, perched on a small, makeshift stage, a young woman with a lute held the crowd captivated. Her presence was unassuming, her dress simple, but her voice was a clear, soaring melody, rich with emotion and imbued with a subtle, almost magical resonance. This was S.C. Davin, Little I. Though Naruto didn't know her name yet, he simply recognized the raw talent, the pure artistry that shone through her performance. She sang of lost loves and valiant deeds, her fingers dancing across the lute strings, coaxing forth notes that spoke directly to the heart. As he found a quiet spot in the corner, nursing a tankard of local ale, he found himself unexpectedly captivated. He usually sought efficiency, directness. But this was beauty. After a particularly poignant ballad about a knight's sacrifice, the crowd erupted in cheers. SC, her face glowing with genuine pleasure, bowed deeply. As patrons clamored for her attention, she deftly navigated the crush, her gaze, sharp and surprisingly observant for someone so outwardly gentle, swept over the room. It landed on Naruto. He wasn't applauding or making noise. He simply watched her, his expression calm, appreciative. His white hair was striking, and there was an aura about him, a quiet strength that set him apart from the boisterous crowd. She had heard the whispers, of course, the folk tales of the White Fox, Witcher, a solitary legend. But the man before her didn't fit the brutal, unfeeling stereotype. There was something in his eyes, a depth, a quiet understanding, that intrigued her. She finished collecting a few coins and, drawn by an instinct she couldn't name, she approached his table. A quiet admirer, are we? She asked, her voice soft, melodic, but with a hint of playful curiosity. I rarely see a face so untouched by the ale-fueled revelry. Naruto offered a slight, genuine smile. Your music is wasted on a raucous crowd. Though they appreciate it, they don't feel it. Not truly. He took a sip of his ale. It's rare to hear such honesty in a song. SE blinked, surprised. Most men complimented her beauty, or her dexterity. His words were different, profound. You hear honesty? She asked, a gentle laugh escaping her lips. And what do you hear of the truth, then, Witcher? Her gaze was steady, discerning. She wasn't flirtatious, but genuinely curious. She saw his Witcher medallion, the stylized fox, gleaming faintly against his dark tunic. I hear a story told, not just performed. Naruto replied, his voice a low timbre. Of longing, of courage, of pain. Truth, even when veiled in metaphor. It resonates. He paused, setting down his tankard. You travel alone, don't you? A bard, always seeking new tales. Essie's eyes widened slightly. You're very perceptive. Little I, they call me. I see things, hear things. And sometimes, I make sense of them through song. She hesitated, then pulled up a chair. I've heard tales of you too, White Fox. Rumors of impossible feats, of monsters slain that defy reason. Of a Witcher unlike any other. She leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. They say you don't use signs, not truly. That your magic is different. A silver light, like pure energy. Naruto neither confirmed nor denied it. He simply met her gaze, his expression unreadable. SC, undeterred by his silence, continued. I've been traveling for months. From the northern reaches of Redania, through the heart of Temeria. I hear things, whispers of strange devices, not magical, but mechanical, surfacing in remote villages. Of men in dark robes asking unusual questions. Questions about ancient places, about forgotten histories. Her eyes, indeed, seemed to miss nothing. Just last week, in a village near the Pontar, I heard talk of a black hand that came in the night, taking away a local craftsman who was experimenting with strange old metal. They said he had found a glowing rock. Naruto's gaze sharpened. A glowing rock, a conduit. Go on, he urged, his voice low, intense. SC, sensing his keen interest, continued, speaking quickly. The rumors connect these disappearances, these strange artifacts, to a shadowy group. They're not bandits. They're too organized, too focused. Some say they seek to purify the old world, to bring about a new age through forgotten knowledge. Others whisper of power from before the stars. It's all very vague, very chilling. She shivered, despite the warmth of the inn. I've been collecting these whispers, weaving them into my songs, trying to make sense of them. And then I hear about you, the white fox, appearing in places where these strange things happen. Essie's attraction. She wasn't just observing him for information. She was utterly captivated. His quiet strength, his piercing gaze, his genuine appreciation for her art, and now, his shared interest in the very mysteries she sought to understand, it all drew her in. He wasn't like the boorish knights or the fickle nobles. He was a man of substance, a living legend who listened, truly listened, and treated her insights with respect. She felt a profound sense of safety and intrigue in his presence, a feeling she hadn't known with anyone else. He was a compelling, dangerous, yet strangely gentle enigma. Meanwhile, in a more exclusive, hushed salon within the Oxenford Academy, Yennefer engaged in a delicate dance of information with Master Cadman, a notoriously reclusive arcanist. The air here smelled of parchment and old magic, a stark contrast to the common inn. Indeed, Yennefer, Cadman droned, a wizened man whose eyes were perpetually unfocused from staring at ancient scripts. The concept of spirit tech is not new. Old elven texts speak of it. Devices that harness fundamental forces, not through spellcraft, but through pure, raw, elemental resonance. Much like your conduit, here. He gestured to a detailed magical projection Yennefer had conjured of the talisman Naruto carried. But these records were dismissed as myth. Fantastical constructs of a bygone era, before the conjunction of the spheres truly solidified the magical world. And yet, these myths are manifesting now, Yennefer pressed, her voice sharp. My analysis of the conduit suggests a power signature that is both impossibly ancient and terrifyingly efficient. It's not magical, it's engineered existence. And these, obsidian hand, cultists are clearly trying to reactivate more of them. They've infiltrated, Cadman revealed, lowering his voice. Not just our academy, but segments of the Redanian court, even the banking guilds. Disaffected scholars, disgruntled mages, desperate merchants. They are ripe for their promises of a new order, built on rediscovered power. They call their inner circle the architects, claiming to possess blueprints for a world remade. They seek a larger nexus to consolidate these conduits, to fully power their grand design. They believe the true sources of energy lie dormant in places forgotten by time, waiting to be unearthed. He sighed, running a hand over his bald head. Dangerous times, Yennefer. Very dangerous. Across the city, in a dimly lit barracks reeking of sweat and stale beer, Vase was leaning against a scarred wooden table, listening to a grizzled Redanian scout captain, his face etched with the weariness of constant vigilance. They're not just moving artifacts, Captain, the scout rasped, pouring himself another measure of cheap spirits. They're moving people, craftsmen, engineers, even a few rogue alchemists. Anyone with a mind for building or breaking things. They vanish, silently, and then, a few weeks later, we hear of strange attacks. Of golem-like things, but faster, smarter. Like the ones you fought, Vase. The obsidian hand, Vase confirmed, her voice low. Their reach is expanding, faster than anyone realizes. They're not just a cult. They're building an army of things. And they're looking for something else, the captain added, his eyes darting around cautiously. A child of prophecy, they call her. Someone with rare blood. They believe she's the key to unlocking the greater power of their devices. She has to be elder blood, or something akin to it. They're searching far and wide, paying ridiculous sums for any information, any sighting of a young woman with a unique aura. Political web. The pieces were slowly slotting into place. The obsidian hand was not a loose collection of fanatics, but a highly organized, deeply infiltrated faction seeking to weaponize ancient technology and, terrifyingly, human resources, specifically, elder blood. Their goal was destabilization, using chaos as a crucible for their new order, powered by rediscovered, spirit tech. As dusk settled, casting long, shifting shadows across the rain-slicked streets, Naruto made his way to the Gilded Quill, a quiet, dignified establishment known for its excellent spirits and discreet patrons. He found a secluded booth and ordered a strong, dark ale, his mind piecing together the fragments SC had provided. The glowing rock, the black hand, the search for a child of prophecy, it all coalesced into a chilling picture. Yennefer arrived first, her expression taut, a subtle aura of frustration clinging to her. She slammed a heavy tome onto the table. They're calling it proto-creation technology. It harnesses primordial energies, not through the conventional magical conduits we understand, but through a conceptual interface with the fundamental forces of the world. And they're not just looking for more conduits. They're looking for a catalyst. Something with an immense, raw life force or magical signature that can jumpstart the main nexus of these devices. She looked at him, her amethyst eyes blazing with a fierce intensity. They're planning something catastrophic. Vase arrived moments later, her face grim. She pulled out a crudely drawn map, highlighting regions in Temeria and Redania where strange disappearances and skirmishes with their constructs had been reported. They're methodical, striking at key infrastructure, disrupting trade routes, sowing discord. They're softening the ground, preparing for a larger move. And worse, they're actively searching for a girl. A powerful sorceress. By the descriptions, someone with elder blood capabilities, by the sound of it. She slammed her fist on the table. They want to turn her into a living power source. Naruto took a long sip of his ale. They found a conduit near the Spectre's lair. It implies they are linking these strange attacks to locations of power, or to latent energy signatures. The chaos serves their purpose. It clears the path for their new order. He then detailed what SE had told him. And a bard I met corroborated some of these whispers. She heard of them taking craftsmen, of glowing rocks, and of a black hand cult that calls themselves the Architects. Yennefer's eyes narrowed. A bard. You were consorting with minstrels, Witcher, when we were gathering vital intelligence. Her voice was laced with a familiar, cutting sarcasm, but beneath it, a sliver of pique, a barely concealed irritation. Yennefer's jealousy, intrigue. She was accustomed to being the most intelligent, the most indispensable. The thought of him engaging with a mere bard, and getting useful information from them, struck a nerve. It also highlighted a side of him she hadn't seen, his ability to connect with ordinary people. To extract information from unconventional sources. It was unexpectedly charming, and therefore, unexpectedly annoying. Ves's observation. Vase merely observed Yennefer's reaction with a knowing, almost imperceptible smirk. She appreciated Naruto's unconventional methods. A good bard knows more than most spies, sorceress. They hear everything. Her gaze lingered on Naruto. A silent acknowledgement of his unique ability to gain trust, even from those outside his usual sphere. Just then, the door to the Gilded Quill opened, and SE Davin stepped inside, shaking the rain from her cloak. She spotted Naruto and, with a tentative but hopeful smile, made her way over. I hope I'm not intruding, she said, her voice soft. But I overheard some disturbing whispers. From a group of merchants in the marketplace. They spoke of routes being blocked by strange, mechanical beasts, and of a powerful cult seizing control of old trade outposts. She looked around, realizing the gravity of the company. Her gaze meeting Yennefer's piercing amethyst eyes, then Ves's stern stare. She seemed to shrink slightly, but her resolve was clear. I believe it's connected to what we discussed, Mr. Fox. Naruto gestured to an empty seat. Not at all, SC. Your insights are welcome. We've gathered much, but your network seems to pick up on things that escape the usual channels. SC sat, pulling out a small, worn notebook. I've compiled what I heard, the places, the dates. It paints a picture. They're systematically choking off supply lines to key cities, creating widespread panic and desperation. She laid the notebook on the table, her hand trembling slightly. This, obsidian hand, they're more than whispers. They're a storm. A silence descended on the booth, broken only by the distant sounds of the festival outside. The gravity of Essie's information, combined with Yennefer's arcane knowledge and Ves's military intelligence, painted a chilling, undeniable truth. The Obsidian Hand wasn't just a cult. They were a burgeoning force, systematically destabilizing regions, their power rooted in a terrifying fusion of ancient technology and insidious influence. They sought to not just dominate, but to reshape the world. Naruto looked at each of them in turn. Yennefer, formidable and brilliant. Vase, steadfast and cunning. And SC, unexpectedly brave and insightful. Each brought a unique perspective, a crucial piece of the puzzle. This is no longer a localized problem, Naruto finally said, his voice low and resolute. They mean to remake the world in their image. And they need a catalyst to do it. A powerful one. He paused, his gaze hardening. We need to find this catalyst before they do. And we need to find their nexus, their central power source, before they can activate it during this predicted cosmic alignment. SC, despite her initial nervousness, met his gaze with newfound determination. Then I'm coming with you. Her voice was firm. My songs carry far, and my little eye sees much. I can help. I want to help. Yennefer scoffed, but for once, it lacked its usual bite. A bard, you'll only get in the way. She has proven her worth. Naruto cut in, his gaze unwavering as he looked at SC. Her network, her observations. They are invaluable, and her courage, undeniable. He turned his gaze to Yennefer, a silent challenge in his cerulean eyes. Besides, she can compose our heroic epic when this is all over. A faint, dry smile played on his lips. Vase, ever pragmatic, nodded. She's got good ears and she's nimble. Might be useful for scouting. And she's not afraid to put herself out there for something she believes in. That counts for something. Yennefer rolled her eyes dramatically, but conceded with a frustrated sigh. Fine, but if you get a single scratch on my fine leather, bard, I'll turn you into a lute. It was as close to an acceptance as SC was likely to get from the sorceress. The decision was made. The group, now expanded and united by a shared, formidable threat, prepared to leave Oxenfurt. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but the festive atmosphere had taken on a new, ominous edge. A storm was brewing, not just in the sky, but across the continent, and at its heart, was the desperate race to stop the Obsidian Hand. Naruto felt the weight of their combined purpose, and the strange, compelling connections that were beginning to bind them all together. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. Echoes of the Elder Blood. The raw, biting breath of winter swept down from the towering peaks of the northern kingdoms, stripping the trees bare and painting the landscape in stark shades of white and gray. Gone were the lively greens and earth tones of Oxenfurt. Here, the silence was profound, broken only by the mournful keen of the wind and the crunch of fresh snow underfoot. Their destination, Kar Morhen, not the traditional Witcher Keep of the Wolves, but an older, more isolated sanctuary, a legendary fox den, whispers of which rarely reached even the most learned scholars. It was a place Naruto had sought only in the deepest corners of his mind, a return to a fragmented past. Naruto led the way, his senses strained against the vastness of the wilderness. He wasn't just navigating by map. He was tracking the almost imperceptible whispers of ancient energies, the faint resonance that called to his unique blood. Vase, ever the pragmatist, handled their dwindling supplies and kept a vigilant eye on their flanks, her movements efficient and tireless despite the cold. Yennefer, huddled deeper in her fur-lined cloak, occasionally cast a warming charm, her usual sharp wit muted by the sheer, overwhelming desolation of the terrain. SC, bundled in layers, hummed soft, low tunes to herself. Her eyes wide with a bard's awe at the untouched, savage beauty of the land, sketching hurried impressions in a small, waterproof notebook. Are you certain this is the place, Witcher? Yennefer's voice, though quiet, was sharp enough to cut through the wind. These mountains are infamous for swallowed travelers. And this, fox den, of yours, there are no maps, no clear legends. It sounds like a myth born of delirium. Myths, sorceress, often have roots in truth, Naruto replied, his gaze fixed on a distant, jagged peak that seemed to pierce the low-hanging clouds. And my senses don't lie. The resonance is strong. This place hums with an energy akin to my own, but deeper. Older. He felt a strange pull, a sense of belonging he hadn't known since he could remember. They trekked for days, battling the increasingly harsh elements. The air was thin, the cold merciless, seeping into bones. Naruto, with his enhanced stamina and resistance, rarely showed discomfort, but he observed the others. Vase, tough as she was, clenched her jaw against the wind. Yennefer's elegant features were pinched with cold, though she'd never admit it. SC shivered constantly, but refused to complain. Her spirit remarkably resilient. He shared his meager rations, offered a steadying hand on treacherous climbs, and sometimes, during their brief, frigid rests, he'd cast a subtle, warming application of his foxfire arts. A faint, invisible warmth that radiated outward, subtly easing the chill from their bones. He always disguised it as a natural shift in the wind, a trick of the terrain. But Yennefer's perceptive gaze occasionally lingered on him, a knowing glint in her amethyst eyes. Finally, on the fourth day, as a light snow began to fall, dusting the world in fresh white, they crested a ridge. Below them, nestled in a secluded, snow-dusted valley, lay what remained of Kaer Morhen, the true fox den. It wasn't the formidable, well-preserved fortress depicted in ballads of other Witcher schools. This was a ruin of haunting beauty, ancient and weathered, its towering stone walls crumbled in places, its once proud turrets reduced to jagged teeth against the sky. But even in decay, it exuded a palpable aura of power, a latent energy that seemed to hum beneath the snow. Gods above, Vase breathed, a rare moment of awe in her voice. It's vast and utterly desolate, Yennefer added, but her eyes, too, held a spark of fascination. The magic here is different. Wild, untamed by human hand. It feels primeval. As they descended into the valley, Naruto's senses screamed at him. Not a monster, not an obsidian hand construct, but a living, volatile energy signature. Powerful, untrained, and frightened. Hold, he whispered, drawing his steel blade, its muted sue. Our face barely visible against the falling snow. Someone's here, and they're in trouble. They picked their way through the deepening snow, following the escalating energy signature. They found her in the remnants of what must have been an outer training yard, a clearing choked with snow-covered rubble and the skeletal remains of ancient training dummies. A young woman, no older than her early 20s, battled desperately against 3 crude, augmented human soldiers, remnants of the obsidian hand, perhaps, dispatched on a scouting mission before the main force. She was a whirlwind of motion, her slight frame belying a fierce, almost feral strength. She wielded a short sword, her movements untrained but instinctual, fueled by raw desperation. Her hair, the color of ash, was streaked with blood, and her eyes, an impossible emerald green, blazed with furious defiance. It was Ciri. She wasn't using magic, not consciously. But with every desperate parry, every wild lunge, a faint shim of golden-green light emanated from her, subtly deflecting blows, briefly disorienting her attackers, or making her impossibly fast. This was raw, untamed elder blood. The very power the obsidian hand sought to harness. One of the soldiers, larger than the rest, raised a heavy axe for a killing blow. Ciri, exhausted and bleeding, stumbled, bracing for impact. Naruto moved. He was a streak of white against the falling snow. Silent and impossibly swift, he didn't waste a moment with words. His blade flashed, a silver streak, severing the soldier's arm at the elbow with chilling precision. The man screamed, clutching the stump. Naruto spun, fluid as water, his foxfire-enhanced fist slamming into the second soldier's jaw, sending him flying into a snowdrift, unconscious. The third, startled, fumbled for his weapon. But Naruto was already there, a silent shadow. A precise strike to the temple, and the soldier crumpled. It was over in seconds. Quiet, brutal efficiency. Ciri, panting, dropped her sword. Her emerald eyes wide with shock and a dawning awe. She looked at Naruto, then at the fallen soldiers, then back at him. You came. Her voice was a breathless whisper, filled with an ancient weariness. Naruto knelt beside her, his movements gentle, assessing her injuries. A deep gash on her arm, several nasty bruises. You fought well, he said, his voice low, calming. He placed a gloved hand on her wounded arm, and a faint, soothing silver glow emanated from his palm, knitting the flesh together, closing the wound with surprising speed. It was a subtle, healing application of his foxfire arts, a rare sight. Ciri watched, mesmerized, as the skin closed, leaving only a faint scar. She felt a profound connection to him, a resonance that went deeper than anything she'd ever known. He didn't question her power, or shy away from it. He simply helped. He was strong, powerful, but gentle. He radiated a quiet stability, an anchor in her chaotic, terrifying existence. Ciri's attraction. She had been hunted, betrayed, used. Naruto was different. He didn't want anything from her, not her power, not her lineage. He offered protection, guidance, and an unspoken understanding of what it meant to be different. to wield a power that set them apart. He became the steadfast rock she desperately needed, a guardian and, even in this first encounter, someone who felt like family. She was drawn to his strength, yes, but more so to his quiet kindness and the sense of safety he instantly brought. Yennefer and Vase arrived, their weapons drawn, their expressions grim. Yennefer's eyes, sharp as obsidian shards, immediately fixed on Ciri, sensing the raw, uncontrolled power that pulsed from her. Elder blood, she murmured, a mix of reverence and apprehension in her tone. Uncontrolled, raw, the obsidian hands, catalyst. So, the rumors were true. Vase scanned the area, noting the obsidian hand insignia on the fallen soldiers' uniforms. They tracked her here, which means they know this place. This, Fox Den, might not be safe for long. Naruto helped Ciri to her feet. "We'll make it safe," he stated, his voice firm, unwavering. He turned to Yennefer. "She's injured. We need to find shelter. Now." They quickly moved into the desolate confines of the main keep, its shattered halls echoing with the wind. Naruto found a surprisingly intact chamber, shielded from the elements. As Yennefer tended to Ciri's deeper wounds with her conventional healing magic, and as she offered comforting words and a small, sweet dried fruit, Naruto began to explore the keep. This was Kaer Morhen, his ancestral training ground. Not the traditional Witcher school that mutated children into monster hunters, but a place where a different kind of power, a deeper connection to the world's latent spiritual energies, was cultivated. He ran his hand over ancient, worn stones, feeling the faint, almost imperceptible echoes of past generations of foxes. This was where his own unique lineage, his foxfire arts, had been honed. He found it in the deepest, most secluded part of the keep, beneath the shattered remains of what must have been a grand library, a hidden chamber, untouched by the ravages of time. Within, ancient glyphs glowed faintly on the walls, depicting intricate energy schematics that mirrored, in abstract, the patterns he'd seen on the obsidian hand's talisman. And at the chamber's heart, a circular dais, upon which lay a collection of ancient, scroll-like tablets, not of parchment, but of a flexible, metallic material. Revelation of White Fox lore. Naruto touched a tablet. Images flooded his mind, not like a direct memory, but a conceptual download. Fragmented, abstract, but intensely clear. The white foxes were not merely witchers. They were guardians of primal energies, some of which were not magical in the conventional sense, but a form of spiritual technology, a way to interface with the world's intrinsic life force and ancient cosmic patterns. Silent City wasn't just a place of power. It was a conduit for global harmonization, or terraforming, designed by a pre-human civilization. The obsidian hand wasn't just re-engineering, they were corrupting this benevolent technology, twisting it for control and destruction. Their goal was to use the nexus of the Silent City, powered by elder blood, to impose their own twisted order on the world. Naruto's foxfire arts, his heightened senses, his unique connection to nature, it was all part of this lineage, a genetic memory, a predisposition to wield this spiritual technology. He emerged from the chamber, his face grim but resolute. He explained what he had learned, translating the ancient concepts into terms they could understand. Yennefer listened, her expression growing increasingly grave. Vase grunted, her eyes narrowed in thought. Essie's eyes were wide with a bard's wonder and dread. "So, they don't just want her power," Yennefer summarized, looking at Ciri. "They want to turn her into a living key. A sacrifice to activate this ancient machine of theirs. To reshape the world, not just conquer it." Ciri listened, her face pale, but a fierce determination hardening her emerald eyes. She had always felt different, her power a burden and a terror. Now, she understood its true, horrifying purpose to the obsidian hand. She looked at Naruto, a silent plea for guidance, for understanding. "Training and bonding. We will train you," Naruto said, his voice calm and firm. "Control is paramount. Your power is immense, Ciri, but untamed it will consume you, or they will exploit it. Here, in this Fox Den, we will teach you. My methods are unconventional, but they will give you discipline. Yennefer will teach you control of the arcane. Vase will teach you to fight with precision. Essie will help you channel your emotions. We will turn their weapon into our shield." The days that followed were intense. Naruto began series training, not in traditional sword forms, but in a fluid, instinctive combat style that leveraged her innate speed and the subtle bursts of energy that accompanied her movements. He taught her how to perceive the flow of energy, to predict, to react, much like his own sensory overload. He pushed her, relentlessly, but with an unwavering patience that astonished Yennefer. He taught her to focus her elder blood bursts, not into wild explosions, but into precise, targeted releases. Controlling the raw power, Yennefer, for her part, put Ciri through rigorous magical exercises, teaching her how to channel her chaotic energy, how to build mental barriers, how to discipline her mind against the overwhelming surges of power. Vase, seeing Ciri's natural agility, drilled her in close quarters combat and strategic movement, honing her instincts into deadly precision. SC, observing Ciri's struggles, offered not just comfort, but a unique form of guidance, using rhythm and song to help Ciri find focus, to calm the internal storm that raged with her power. Harem dynamics. Yennefer. She observed the profound connection between Naruto and Ciri. A flicker of something complex crossed her features, not exactly jealousy, but a possessive instinct over her, Witcher's time and attention. Yet, she also saw Ciri's desperate need, and a rare, almost maternal protectiveness stirred within her. She found herself actively participating in Ciri's training, recognizing the girl's vital importance. She found Naruto's patience with Ciri fascinating, a softer side to the white fox she hadn't anticipated. Vase. She saw Ciri as a strategic asset, a powerful weapon that needed honing. She admired Naruto's ability to calmly manage such raw power. Her respect for him deepened with every shared training session. SC. She was a confidant to Ciri, offering solace and empathy. She also continued to observe Naruto, seeing the deep compassion beneath his warrior exterior, the inherent protectiveness he showed to Ciri, and indeed, to all of them. Her admiration for him grew, blooming into something warm and gentle. One frigid afternoon, during a particularly intense training session, Ciri, pushed to her limits, lost control. A surge of frustration and raw power erupted from her. Not a precise burst, but a concussive wave of elder blood energy that slammed into the ancient stone wall of the keep, cracking it like an eggshell and sending a shockwave rippling through the valley. It was a terrifying display of untamed power. Naruto moved instantly, shielding Ciri, his own foxfire flaring to absorb the brunt of the shockwave. The power was immense, too immense to hide. "They'll know," Yennefer breathed, her voice tight, already sensing the distant ripple of arcane and technological detection. That burst, it will have registered on their most sensitive instruments. Vase, her face grim, grabbed her blade. "Then let them come. We're ready." Naruto looked out at the vast, snow-covered landscape. He felt the tremor of approaching forces, the subtle hum of distant machines. The cold, calculating intent of the obsidian hand. They knew Ciri was here. They were coming for their catalyst. He felt the immense weight of protecting her, of protecting them all. But as he looked at the women gathered around him, Yennefer, fierce and powerful, Vase, loyal and unyielding, SC, empathetic and strong, and Ciri, bruised but defiant, he knew they would face it together. Their purpose was clear. Chapter 4 End. The end. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.